Chapter 6 Father. On Sundays, David Cole went down to the basement, and now Ethan went with him. It had become their habit through the slow turning of that first year, a thing Susan allowed with a tired, grateful smile, because a Sunday with the baby was a Sunday she could have to herself. David would settle Ethan in an old apple crate padded with a folded blanket, set it where the light was good and the sawdust would not reach, and then he would work and talk, the way men talk to children and to themselves at once, expecting no answer and somehow saying everything. The basement was David's workshop, such as it was, a corner of the building's storage room he'd claimed with the super's blessing, a workbench he'd built himself, pegboard hung with tools each in its outlined place. It smelled of pine and machine oil, and the cold concrete underneath. In Ethan's first life, this room had been one more thing that vanished in 1999, sold off or thrown out in the long grief, and he had not thought of it in 30 years. Now he sat in the apple crate and watched his father's hands, and remembered them. That was the thing he had not expected and could not have braced for, how whole his father was. The David in Ethan's memory had been a photograph and an ache, a smile gone soft at the edges, a smell of pine, a single unbearable feeling of safety taken away. But the David at the workbench was a man, complete and particular and alive in 100 small ways the photograph had never held. He hummed under his breath while he worked, always slightly flat. He licked his thumb before he counted anything. He talked to wood, scolding a board that warped, praising one that planed clean. He had a scar on the back of his left hand, pale and old, and when Ethan's eyes found it, David caught the look and grinned. "This guy," he held up the hand, "got that when I was younger than you'll be before you know it." Jizzle slipped. My old man didn't even look up, just said, "Bleed away from the work, son." He laughed low and easy. Best advice I ever got. Bleed away from the work. Ethan in the crate looked at the scar and at the living hand around it and felt his throat close. He had spent 37 years grieving a wound. He had never once in all that time grieved this, the flat humming, the licked thumb, the old joke about the chisel, because he had been 7 when it was taken, and 7-year-olds do not know to memorize a man while they have him. They think they will have him always. Ethan was not 7 anymore. He was 44 behind the eyes, and he knew exactly what was coming and exactly how little time was in it, and he sat in the apple crate and did the only thing a grieving man can do with a living father. He memorized him. The flat humming, the licked thumb, bleed away from the work. He took each detail and set it carefully away, not on the great cold map of the future, but somewhere warmer and more private, a place that had nothing to do with strategy at all. Toward the end of the afternoon, David set down his tools and came and sat on an overturned bucket beside the crate, the way he sometimes did, and looked at his son with a quiet that was rare in him. "You're a funny kid, you know that," he said. There was no worry in it, only wonder. "Your mom says you've got a sense for things. I think she's right. You watch everything. You've got these old eyes." He reached out and rubbed a thumb gentle over Ethan's cheek, leaving the faint, warm smell of sawdust. "I look at you sometimes and I think, this one's going to do something. Something bigger than this." He gestured around the cramped concrete corner, the claimed bench, the pegboard. "I never minded small myself. Good work, a roof, your mom, you in," he smiled, "and whoever else shows up. That's plenty for me. But you, I think you're going to want the whole sky. He said it lightly, the idle hope of a tired, happy man on a Sunday, and he could not have known how the words would land, that his son already wanted the whole sky, and for the most terrible of reasons, and that something bigger than this was not a dream but a sentence Ethan had read at the far end of a torn future. You just take your time getting there, David said, ruffling the small dark hair. No rush. Your old man's going to be around a good long while to watch. Ethan looked up at his father's certain, smiling, doomed face, and something in him went very still and very hard, in the good way, in the way iron is hard. No, he thought. You're not. Not the way it went. Not this time. That night Ethan did not work on the map. He lay in the dark and went over the afternoon instead, detail by detail, the scar, the joke, the bucket, the whole sky, not as a strategist filing intelligence, but as a son holding what he had been impossibly, undeservedly given back. And he made himself a second promise, smaller and more exact than the first. The first promise had been to his father, the abstract one, the wound to save him, to bend 1999 to spare the family. It was a good promise, and he meant it with all of both his lives. But abstractions were easy to fail. You could lose an abstraction by inches and not notice until it was gone. So now he made the promise specific and bound it to the man on the bucket with the licked thumb and the flat hum. Not my father, this man. David Cole, who bleeds away from the work, who talks to wood, who thinks I'll want the whole sky. This exact, particular living man. I am going to keep him. He set the promise down beside the warm, private pile of memorized things, and far below it, almost too faint to feel, the cold thread in his chest waited in the dark, the thread that had stirred the first time he changed the world, and had not yet stirred again, and that Ethan was beginning to suspect, without yet daring to believe, might one day be the difference between a promise made and a promise kept.